Hi there, welcome to Music Ally Focus with me, Music Ally's editor, Joe Sparrow. And this is another episode in our series of podcasts investigating ethics and responsibility in the music industry. We're joined in this episode by Janelle Mitchell and Esteé Blu, two recipients of the Richard Antwi Scholarship, which aims to support Black and minority ethnic students living in the UK and awards a full scholarship for a place on the University of Westminster's highly regarded music business management MA course. We wanted to speak to them to find out how they look at the music industry from their perspectives, the hurdles that they see in front of them, the changes that they think needs to be made, and how the goal of having currently underrepresented people in senior roles in the future will have a transformative effect. Now, what's this Focus podcast? Well, Music Ally provides, as you know, an analysis-rich and contextual guide to the music business. And each of these Focus episodes looks at one meaningful music business topic at a time. This podcast is also going to be quick. It will take about the same amount of time as Lucas the horse could correctly identify 600 numbers. That's hypothetically, of course. Lucas, a 17-year-old thoroughbred gelding, correctly identified 19 numbers in 1 minute in 2010. Assisted by his owner and trainer, Karen Murdoch. We are unaware of how many numbers Karen can identify correctly in 1 minute. Now, talking of big numbers, the Richard Antwi Scholarship has been funded by all three UK major record labels, music publishers, and a number of the top independent music companies and law firms, as well as individual donors. And two recipients are joining us now to talk about how they see the industry unfolding in front of them. Janelle Mitchell is a London-based creative and emerging music executive who started off as a DJ in 2017 and works as an artist relations manager at Believe. Esteé Blu is an old friend of the podcast, having appeared on the old Music Ally TV show, the precursor to this podcast, folks. And as well as being an artist, she has spent time in a number of industry-side roles. She's also a consultant who specializes in youth, women advocacy, and Black-led organizations within the music industry. Okay, let's jump over to our interview with Janelle and Esteé now. So we're very happy to be joined here on the Focus podcast by Janelle Mitchell and Esteé Blu. Welcome to both of you. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you.
Huge pleasure to have you here. Now, let's start with some introductions. Can you tell me what you are doing in the music industry and what your background is, perhaps, a bit of context, and then what you are getting out of or think you are going to get out of the Richard Antwi Scholarship and what it's doing for your career. Janelle, let's start with you as the person who's just been given this award.
I started off by becoming a DJ. It wasn't intentional. It was during a period when I was trying to get my foot in the door and really struggling and I wasn't employed, and I tapped into my creativity, and as a result of that, the DJing was born, and that basically led me to where I am today. So I started that 5 years ago, but throughout that time, so I was basically doing it freelance. Throughout that time, I was constantly trying to find ways into the industry to work behind the scenes, and during that time, I managed to get my first job in music working for Believe as an artist relations manager. So I've been doing that for 2 years now. And I think, off the back of that, plus the DJing, it just really helped me to then get the scholarship.
What do you hope to get out of it in terms of the assistance it provides you?
I want to gain the knowledge. That was a big thing for me because I'd already kind of got over that first hurdle of just getting my foot in the door. You know, we hear it a lot. It's quite common, people struggling just to get into the industry. So I'd already conquered that and I was really happy about that. But I just felt that I'd had this level of imposter syndrome that just wasn't going. So I feel like, by gaining that knowledge, it will help me to eradicate that. And, I've been doing it for about 6 weeks now, and I can already feel the confidence, like I'm learning so much, and also just the connections, but then also the Richard Antwi team being introduced to them, and just how friendly and helpful they were. It's really encouraging.
Thanks, Janelle. And let's bring you into the conversation. By the way, Esteé Blu is an old friend of the Music Ally podcast, who was in one of the very, very earliest editions, and fantastic to see you again.
Yes, thanks for having me.
You were the recipient of this scholarship previously, so
Yes.
Can you explain what you're doing and how that has fitted in with what you have done subsequently?
Yes, absolutely. So I got the scholarship in 2019. So I was able to do my master's in music business management between 2019 and 2020. And prior to that, I was finding my foot in primarily as an artist. I guess that's the whole reason why I'm kind of in the music business, because I enjoyed making music and releasing it as an independent artist. But I think for me, the reasons why I wanted to educate myself was because I was independent and I was self-managing. And by that point in my career, in 2019, it had been 4 years of me trying things out, experimenting, meeting different people, but not quite getting where I thought I should be. So I kind of wanted to take control of my career, and it was the best thing that I've ever done for myself, the best investment. And I'm really grateful that the Richard Antwi Scholarship team, the committee, saw something in me and were prepared to invest in me. So the world stopped in 2020 because of COVID. All of these things that, had been a part of my life for the past 4 or 5 years, I couldn't do anymore. But having the opportunity to write a dissertation, and my dissertation focused on Black women in music, particularly R&B soul singers, the darker skinned ones in British music, and their experiences with racism, colorism and sexism. And I also looked at kind of liberation ideas around that, to do with like Afrofuturism and stuff, like really wild things.
It sounds interesting. I would fancy reading that.
Yeah. But in my brain, I was kind of like thinking about all these things artistically and trying to get an understanding. Well, why did this person have a really great album and it didn't quite hit and it didn't quite work? And, I was just trying to figure things out. So essentially having that time, 3 or 4 months to really sit with this work, talk to people, really brought out a new voice in me. And then I started writing more. Great. In terms of like the articles that I've released. And I've just done an article with Mix Mag. And of course, I came on your podcast and spoke about, Black women, especially darker skinned Black women in British music. So it definitely unearthed a new voice in me, or new ways that I could use my voice, and really empowered me to be like, there's a lot of things wrong, but there's a lot of ways that I can be involved in that change. So yeah, it did a lot for me.
Great. Well, plenty to live up to there, Janelle. And you've got a good, clearly a good path forwards, which is nice to hear, isn't it? Now, I'd like to also talk really here about the sort of implications. See, one of the things we're talking about here is representation at an industry level. You're both young professionals in the UK music industry, and when you look at it from your positions right now, what do you see when you look ahead in terms of opportunities for yourself, hurdles, and what excites you about that picture looking forwards? What is there to do, basically?
I feel like as a Black woman in music, I and behind the scenes, it's a weird position for me, because I'm seeing work that's being done from Black executives, especially from 2020 and the Black Lives Matter movement, and the industry, speaking up and saying, okay, we really need to sort this out. I've been seeing a lot of initiatives and a lot of execs really putting their best foot forward and coming up with ways to really beat the discrimination. So there's definitely hope there. I'm very hopeful, and obviously the scholarship has aided that hope, because I was starting to get a bit impatient about the way things were going. So yeah, I'm very hopeful in that aspect, but I think there's just such a big gap, and there's still so much work to be done. And I think it's not necessarily down to people like me and Esteé, who are Black women in the music trying to hold everything down, but I think we still need to push the agenda forward. I think we still need to use our voices to let people know that there is work that needs to be done. I'm hopeful. I'm seeing a lot more Black execs. I'm seeing more women, and I think we're starting to get the accolades we deserve. But there's still a lot of work to be done, ultimately.
Esteé, what are the hurdles that you see? What are the changes that can be made, and how do you see your path ahead of you?
It's a really interesting time because we are kind of 2 years and a bit on from the Black Lives Matter resurgence, Black Square Day. I know there's better ways to describe that day, but that's essentially what it was, where there are a lot of pledges and a lot of promises. And coming away from, getting my MA, which was amazing, and then going to do 2 years, which I've just come out of an industry placement that was part-time, whilst I did some consultancy and still did some artist stuff behind the scenes, because I did put my music on pause, or have put my music on pause for a couple of years now. But it's really interesting to see people make space, but also retain the same systems and structures that have always existed. So what I found personally was being put into environments where, yes, okay, I have the opportunity to be there, but I don't necessarily get an opportunity to say anything. I don't get an opportunity to contribute in a meaningful way. And I don't get an opportunity to necessarily progress in the same way that my white female colleague could, or my Black male colleague could.
You're talking here about your time working in the music industry side of things,
yeah.
Right? And so are you saying here that essentially you were sort of there to, I'm paraphrasing, but to sort of fulfill a visible remit, but you weren't given the opportunity to speak?
Yeah, I think it depends what departments you work in, and whether your team and the leadership is willing to embrace change. But I think from my personal experience, I've seen that there are some who are and there are some who aren't. And if you have the misfortune of being in an environment that's like, okay, I'll let her in, but is not prepared to do anything beyond that, then that becomes really difficult and that becomes really challenging. That's a lot of the reasons why there is always still more work to do. But I don't think, in terms of energy, I don't think it's fair for people like myself and Black women in particular to always carry this burden of wanting to push change, because actually we are not in the positions to actually make those real tangible changes. So all that ends up doing is a massive exertion of energy and an exhaustion that can be quite overwhelming and really difficult to deal with. And again, this is my experience, but in the Mixed Mag article that I just spoke about, I was talking about Black women, the music industry, and also mental health, and how working in environments like this can really have a negative impact on your mental health. Because again, as I speak about that exhaustion, you want to be there, you want to be seen, you want to contribute, you want to be visible, but there are people in positions of power who don't want that change, or are only want to do a little bit. And I think there's a lot to be done around the culture of particularly the mainstream music industry. I think the independent sector is pretty cool because I know it quite well because I've come through that. But when you're dealing with the majors and the mainstream, that is a whole system that exists on its own. And trying to be a part of that, I felt was really, really challenging. What I've discovered is what best suits me. And essentially I am an artist, so I need to be creative and I need to be in supportive environments.
There's this issue of sort of increased activity around representation, but then there is a perhaps not deliberate, but a then assumed, as you say, burden on underrepresented people to then push their own agenda. So it's the responsibility goes back to them when, as you say, that what you need really is a systemic change.
Yeah.
What are those? You mentioned one there about, you felt like you were there I'm paraphrasing again, be seen but not heard in a sense, but also that you were expected to, to push the agenda a bit. Are there any other structural issues to be overcome that perhaps the industry is not very good at seeing? It might be making actions over here to try and make a difference, but it's missed these ones over here.
There's too many things. In my ideal world, we would like destroy it and rebuild.
Right.
This
is only a 25-minute podcast, We don't.
No, I think because I think the underbelly of the music business, which is something that I learned pretty much during the copyright module, was that there was this word that they kept using and that they use all the time, exploit. They use the word exploit a lot. And I think as I started to really just understand what it means, it's like, well, how can you exploit something and then also champion for sustainability? Like, that doesn't make sense. If the purpose of an industry is to exploit artists, music, staff in terms of their energy, then how can this ever be a positive thing? And again, this is like something, quite an uncomfortable truth that like I've had to sit with and be like, well, okay, so how do we make it make sense? And that's why I said the destroy and rebuild thing, because it's like, I don't believe art is supposed to be exploited. I don't think human beings are supposed to be exploited. I think we're supposed to like enjoy this short time we have together on earth and use music as a way to heal and laugh and grow and party together, not to exploit. So I think a lot of the systemic issues come around the nature of what it's supposed to do. There's a lot of beauty in the different thing that hasn't quite been formed, hasn't quite been created, but I see little people doing their thing. So like an example of that is the MOBO Awards and what Kanye King has created, and our connection through the MOBO Unsung artist program, which I was a part of a couple of years ago. And I see this thing that she's been creating for like 25 years now. And then I see Charisse Beaumont with Black Lives in Music and the organization that she created only 2 years ago. Today's actually their birthday. And I'm like, this is beautiful. I like what they're doing here. I like this thing that we're creating.
Do you feel that those things which are becoming more and more established, do you think that the existence of them is allowing you as an individual artist to have more control over what you're doing? And obviously your life as an artist interacting with the music industry is a compromise by necessity, right? So do you think you're sort of able to have more control and make it compromise in a way that's more suitable to you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the best things I think to have come out of that really dark and difficult period was choice. And people exercising their voices in different ways and really coming together. So I think the presence of more choice and opportunity in the way technology allows for us to do so many different things and be in so many different places and connect with so many different people just gives us options. So as much as, I can see the purpose that the mainstream kind of music industry serves, but I'm also happy to be like, that's not for me. But there's something else that is right for me.
Okay. Janelle, let's bring you back in. You've got, again, experience in different places as a DJ, and also working on the industry side of things. And of course, now you're studying as well. What about from your perspective? What do you see as these sort of institutional structural issues which perhaps are still in need of a lot of work to make things better from your perspective as a young professional?
Yeah, I mean, I was just listening to what Esteé was saying, and I agree completely. And I think this is the conflict that I'm having at the moment, is just the fact that I love music and I want it to be shared fairly, and for artists to be paid fairly too. But then I'm also a cog in that machine, and it's just balancing that, and it's something I haven't figured out yet. And I'm just thinking, how can I do that? How can I be a part of fair deals and make sure the artist is being well looked after whilst also exploiting that work? Because I think it all just stems from not necessarily putting the artist first and putting profits before people.
Do you think you're going to be in a position where you're going to be able to affect the kind of positive change you want?
I would like to think so. This is what I'm trying to work towards. I think slow and steady change is not overnight. And I think if you can even make a small impact, it will make a difference. I'm not here to say I'm going to try and change the whole industry. I think I might have mentioned that in
Be
my music
bold. Go on,
week.
be bold.
Yeah, I think
It.
I think I did say that. Just like, yeah, I'm going to shake everything up. I'm coming in, everyone.
It's on record now. Yeah.
Beware.
You could say, okay, if I could just work on this bit first and make this change, is there something that you could specifically say that would make things better?
I think I would say, if I could think of one, not pigeonholing, is that even a word? not putting Black execs in one box, which is the Black music box.
Right.
Allowing them to explore other avenues of music. I see it a lot where Black execs, they are A&Rs for hip hop and R&B, or it's just very linear, and we are not linear as a people. And I feel like we should be offered the opportunity within the industry to explore other avenues also, and just be given that choice. I think that's an important word. It's just choice. Whether I may want to focus on hip hop, but I may also want to focus on dance music.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd, isn't it, really? Because the music industry kind of prides itself on doing things that are counter to expectations. And yet when in that sense, it's taking the easy route, isn't it?
But I think if we are really going to, shake things up and really move with the times, the industry needs to understand that they need to try something new. They need to work on a new formula, and just try and put the people first before the profits.
This issue of Black people in executive positions, we've spoken to guests before who are aiming to disrupt this, in the sense that it's what is sometimes called a pipeline issue, which is if you don't have Black people, for instance, in positions of different authority at very senior levels, they then make decisions to bring people in at junior levels, and then they can progress through. But if you don't have those Black people at the top, then fewer people come through at the beginning, right? So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, you can't be who you can't see.
Yeah, right. And you sort of mentioned that there in terms of like how people are being pigeonholed. But what is a good way to disrupt this?
Just start from the ground up. I mean, just coming off my experience when I was trying to get into music after graduating from uni, I had no idea where to go, what to do. I think, especially the majors, they need to go into schools and universities, career fairs. I think they need to make it known that this is a viable career option. I know when I mentioned music to my mum, she was like, what? It's like completely random. And that could be a generational thing, but I think it just needs to be, it doesn't need to be so hidden, and it's like, if you know type of thing. I think they really need to open the doors and let the young people from a school age know that they can have a job in music, and this is how you get to do it.
Esteé, what about you? I mean, the same thing really, this idea of disrupting this pipeline issue. First of all, do you think that is something which exists? And then if so, how can that disruption work?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely exists. And from my experience of seeing it in the majors in a very visceral way, as in like I'm in a meeting and I'm the only Black person and also the only Black woman in the room at a very junior level.
This is a meeting of more junior staff?
No, this is in meetings with other teams or the different kind of brands or whatever we were working with, always being the only Black person and always being the only Black woman in the room. I could definitely see the pipeline issue. It definitely exists. And as Janelle just mentioned, it's a thing of the industry. It's part of the culture. And I think if we want to disrupt a lot of the things that we're talking about in this conversation, we've got to start with the culture. It's a recruitment issue, and that should be something that they should be working on, going to do outreach to schools, colleges, universities, also recruiting people from who work maybe in the independent sector and getting them to kind of come on board. But I think the issue that not a lot of people speak about is also the pay. I think there needs to be a lot of transparency with how much people are getting paid in the business, because again, that's shrouded in secrecy. The word competitive, I'm sure it gives a lot of people nightmares whenever they're, looking at job applications, because, competitive isn't going to pay the rent. I need to know, do I give up this really good job or this really good opportunity to go and pursue a music career? Yes or no? And I think, again, it comes back to choice, and there needs to be transparency. There needs to be an openness. And I think if people are not willing to be transparent and open, I think that says everything about the design of this business. Which is why I guess, I have a lot of the thoughts that I do around, opting for newer systems, creating new frameworks. I think even when I look at where I am now in my career, returning back to music, I'm doing everything differently. Just because I'm only one person, I don't think I can concern myself with the industry anymore, because I've done my time. And there are some great people in there. There's some great people that I've met that I'm still friends with, that still support me, vice versa. But I just, just energy wise, I think we can spend a bit too much time just exhausting ourselves with trying to find solutions. And I want to be a part of the solution.
Okay, and just to jump in here, if you're finding this useful and you'd like more of this in-depth news and trusted analysis waiting for you in your inbox every morning, as well as access to all of our industry-leading reports, head on over to musically.com/subscribe. And you, yes, you may be eligible for a free Music Ally subscription via our corporate and sponsored subscriptions. So if you work for a DSP, a major label, an indie label, or if you're an artist manager, an employee of a CMO or a publisher, you can check to see if it's available for you. It's musically.com/subscription-options. There's a link below the podcast to check out as well. Okay, let's go back to the interview. So essentially, we're sort of looking at maybe two different approaches here. One could be, okay, we can accelerate, let's say, talented, young, Black people in the traditional music industry and accelerate them through to more senior positions sooner, so that there is that visibility, and then they can start making decisions, which has a positive effect. But then there is also another path, which is around independence, where you can say, okay, I'm just going to do things completely differently. I'm going to do it myself, and I have the knowledge and the power to execute the way I want to do it over here. And that also sort of provides the same thing.
Definitely. And also like working with partners and getting investors that are aligned with you, that don't necessarily sit in that, major label cog, but are interested in, again, doing things differently. Because I think with the idea of independence, DIY is very much a part of it. But I think at this stage in my career, I'm definitely looking for business partners who are thinking in the same way that I'm thinking. And there's a lot of companies out there and brands as well that are interesting in supporting artists. And I think for me as an artist, I also have to look at my future investment in a different way as well. It may not come from a label. It's probably likely it won't come, but it might come from a shoe brand. It might come from a headphone company. It might come from a tech startup, and that's more exciting to me because it gives me my voice. It gives me my choice. It allows me to build and grow and sustain my career.
Janelle, let's look ahead a bit then. You are hopefully in the future going to be one of these people who are in a position where they can affect change because you're you're in a senior position, whether that's in the traditional structure of the industry or in something innovative that you've done yourself. What do you hope a future music industry that is more inclusive, that gives underrepresented people first, not just more opportunities, but more visibility and more opportunity? What does that industry look like from your perspective? What would the visible signs of that change be, and how would you like to be part of that?
So for me, a big indicator would just be more Black women in senior positions, including myself. I don't necessarily know what role I want to be in the industry as of yet, but I've definitely considered president and that of a label, and that is not something that I initially thought of up until recently, just reading a lot of like music articles, and I was like, I could actually do this if I really just put my head down. So it's just about, for me, it's just seeing more people like me in senior positions, because I haven't, and that is something I really want to attain to.
Do you feel that there's a sort of tipping point coming where change, the kind of change you want, is? Do you sense that it's coming?
Yes, it's coming. It's slow, very, very slow. But it's coming. And like I said, I think when the industry spoke out in 2020, it really made me feel positively about it.
Esteé, what about you then? You're coming at it from a slightly different angle, but similar in that sense. Same question to you, really. What would be the indicators of a successfully changing music industry in the, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love what Janelle said about more Black women in senior positions, and I want to see more Black British women presidents, because that hasn't existed yet, I don't believe. And I want to see that across the major to the independent spaces. So that would be a great indication that we've got, Black women in the highest position possible in the music business, that is an attainable thing for the next generations of women who also want to aspire to those posts. But I think some of the biggest things is just more choice, more options, because there are people who want to work in a major label system. There are some people who want to work in an independent system. There are some people who will bounce between their careers, moving between the two. And then there's someone like me who's had a foot in on the independent spectrum as an artist, and then I did the major behind the scenes, and then indie, and then I'm back independent. And I think I would love just to see more examples of artist entrepreneurs growing their own businesses, and again partnering with like-minded independent organizations. I think just the presence of choice, because I think, when I was starting out my career, there really wasn't that many channels. It was either you get signed or you go on a TV talent show, and I was offered three auditions to go on a specific talent show, and I said no to all three. But those were the only routes, so I've really steered away from doing things that I didn't think would serve my career, and things that I thought, environments that I thought wouldn't protect me, and have really just done my own thing, gathered the knowledge I needed to then kind of help me to figure this whole thing out. So I think it would be great for the next generation of, singer-songwriters and artists to be able to be like, oh, right, so Esteé did that, and she's got her own company, and she's done this and this and that. And then we've got Janelle over there, who's president of this, and that's amazing, because there's choice. And if they decide to go either route, they can see women who look like them or people who look like them in those positions.
Yeah, the proof is in the pudding. If you both go and do it, it's unavoidable,
right,
for people to
Definitely.
see.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's a good place to leave it then. Now, the people will be listening who have heard that and gone, hey, these two know what they're talking about. So how can they contact you? Esteé, if people want to hear your music or just contact you, how can they do they?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely, socials is the best place. So ESTEEBLUU on Instagram, and then without the extra U on everything else.
Okay. I'll put some links below the podcast so people can find them. Thank you very much. And Janelle, how about you?
Yeah, same. I'm on the socials. So my @ is actually my DJ name, and that is J Dolce.
Great. Well, look, that's really fascinating and really grateful that you could join us. And well, let's stay in touch and check in again regularly, and we can hopefully we can see if changes happen.
Yes.
Hopefully it is. Amazing. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, I'm saying that because when you both elevate to extremely powerful positions, I'll want you on the show. So
good plan.
Yeah.
Yes. Keeping you on side at the start. So Esteé and Janelle, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks.
And there we go. So if you found that useful, please share this podcast on with someone else who you think will also get something out of it. And if you'd like to email me and give me your thoughts, it's joe@musically.com. That's joe@musically.com. Don't forget, we have a free weekly email called The Knowledge, which rounds up a bit of this and a bit of that of the best analysis, news, marketing, insight, and skills from Music Ally. There's a link below the podcast, so sign up and impress your boss. And don't forget as well, you can check out to see if you are eligible for a free Music Ally subscription. That link is also beneath the podcast. So that's it from me, Joe Sparrow. Until next time, farewell.